Hi everyone. Just waiting for you to tune in. Here's a little teaser of something we're going to talk about today. I've had this plaque hanging in my house or my office for about 20 years, but it belongs to my dad and there's a good story behind it, so we'll get into that in a little bit. All right, Daddy, we got people online here with us.
Sure doesn't seem like a week since we did this last time with Marvin and
Oh my gosh.
his house and the birthday thing. And anyway, wanted to say thank you to, I had so many birthday good wishes. I mean, it's just impossible to respond to all of them, but I just want to thank everybody for that, and we'll move along in the next year. But it's been another strange week here. You know, we've definitely done our part as far as laying low and, you know, kind of look out after things. But it's been another tough week. We lost Bunny Burkett this week, which is a big loss to the sport. She definitely made a lot of contributions along the way, and you know, most of her racing was on the East Coast, northeast area. But she was a class act, and really hate to, you know, see another one gone. But anyway, we're still here. We're moving along. Looking forward to November 7th and next Nitro Revival. But nothing's really changed other than the rescheduling of the date, and hopefully things will be ready to go by then. So what do you got, Cinder?
Well, in typical Steve Gibbs form, you've got 8 pages of potential storylines here, so I would expect nothing less from you. But since this is our show, I'm going to take some privileges here, because I definitely have some stories that have been in my mind that I'd love for you to tell. But I do want to address the requests that we're getting, so I'll start with those first. Last week, and we all love Sharon and Bob Moravas, but Sharon mentioned Floyd Lippincott, her husband. Bob, that's his alias. So I thought, and that made your list as well. So can you tell us a little bit about the Floyd Lippincott story and background, how that all came about?
It really is at the time, it was just a nothing deal. I was, you know, writing the drag news articles for the San Gabriel track, and I didn't know Bob real well, Bob Moravas. He was driving John Peters' freight train. And so somewhere along an event where the train was out there at San Gabriel, Bob came to me. I'm not sure just where it was even. At the time, it was just not a big deal. But he basically said, hey, I really would rather you not use my real name in your article. You know, come up with something else. And I didn't think much about it. Had his reasons. And so when I was writing the article for Drag News, I used to sit down and I'd write them longhand in pencil on notebook paper, and then I would take those articles to Drag News, and the ladies down there would set the type, and that was it. So I'm writing this longhand story, cover the results in the freight train driven by, got to make up a name. And so I had a textbook from college, and the last name was Lippincott. That's kind of a, you know, unusual sounding name. Lippincott, that's good. Floyd just came out of the air, and I'm Junior on the end, just
for good
round
measure.
it out. I mean, it was just having a little fun with it. Never thought anything about it.
We're all about the nicknames around.
Yeah, you know. So Floyd Lippincott Jr. driving the freight train did whatever they did at San Gabriel at that event, and so we get to the race the next time out there, and Mel Reck was the announcer at the track, and I'd said something about Mel about not using Bob's name. Of course, Mel uses the name Floyd Lippincott, and that was it. I didn't really think anything about it. Somewhere down the line, it came out that, I mean, along the way, you saw some things in Drag News. There might have been a picture I remember one deal. There was a whole bunch of headshots of top fuel drivers at the time.
Yep, that picture's circulating this week on Facebook.
I think it is. And there's a picture in the middle of that deal with a guy with a face mask, Floyd Lippincott Jr. Well, who the hell's Floyd Lippincott? And it turned into a trivia thing. Well, the backstory to that, and it turns out to be a pretty, sad story. And it's Bob's story, Bob Moravas, and I feel a little awkward even getting into his personal life on this. But apparently the issue was with his dad. And his dad did not want Bob driving. I mean, seriously, he did not want him driving. I imagine a lot of parents say it'd rather you do something else. This was cut and dry. And when Bob's dad found out that he was driving, and it all came out, that was the end of their relationship. And that's the way it stood for the rest of their lives. It's a sad tale, and I think there's going to be a story written about it. It's about a father-son relationship and what led up to that. And at the time, I had no idea the impact that really, the name, that was just a little part of it. It was the issue of Bob having to use a pseudonym to race under because of the personal issues there. So, again, with my apologies to Bob Moravas if I've treaded on a personal issue here. It's not a big secret. I mean, people know this now. But there was a real serious human issue behind that whole thing. And like I said, the name was just a small part. It could have been any name. The real story was Bob and his dad, which is sad.
Well, I just think of him as Floyd now, so it really has stuck, and
we joke about it, and we don't dwell on that part of it, and it's time has passed, but it again had no concept of where this thing might have led when it just came up with a silly name out of the air. So it certainly turned into one of the drag briefing. It's a kind of a trivia question that pops up every now and then.
So speaking of nicknames, Jim Nicole had the great label of Superman. So do you have a good...
Well...
Is it Nicole or Nickel?
I think it was Nicole, but everybody called him Nickel. I mean, that was just kind of, you play with his name. Nicoll, Nicole. And the Superman thing, that's another name I hung on somebody that kind of stuck. And a lot of people think the Superman thing came from when he was involved in that wreck at Indy, when he was racing Prudhomme in the final and the car got sawed in half. And it looked like he was a goner.
Yeah,
that was an ugly looking deal.
Horrible.
And as it turned out, I think it did more damage to Prudhomme than it did Nickel, because Prudhomme was a mess. When he saw that, I think you've all seen the footage where this is a long time ago, and Snake was ready to hang it up, seeing that happen. And probably most people would be. That was an ugly incident.
It was. Make your hair stand up watching.
But as it turned out, Jim was fine, okay? And he was drinking beer with us later that night at the hotel. But the name Superman, actually he had that prior to that, and it all came about. And again, I was writing an article, the results of the story, and one of the hangouts at Irwindale Raceway, this is not the green room, this is the Irwindale Inn. It's another beer joint close to the races that everybody went to either sometime during the weekend. And one night in there, somebody got real mouthy, and he said the wrong thing to Jim Nicole. And Nicole, he was Superman. He took this guy apart, and, and somewhere along the line, I hung the name Superman on him because he was Superman with this guy, and that's where that name come from. And again, no big deal, but it kind of stuck for Jim, and he wound up. I think you've seen pictures of him with a Superman cape on, but it was all a result of a barroom brawl.
Well, there's someone posted on Facebook this week about if we could label today's drivers with nicknames. It doesn't Fast Jack is kind of the only one that's really got a nickname. They just have kind of gotten away from that. I don't know if it's just a...
Yeah, it has, you know, and I'm not quite sure how or why. I think the sponsorship probably has something to do with that. They want the
Maybe.
guy's name probably used more than some nickname. The guy that was great with nicknames was Ralph Gouldahl Jr. And Ralph could have been the premier writer and a great photographer for those years at Lions, and he had a lot to do with the nicknames that got hung on guys. You know, you can think of the obvious ones like the snake and the mongoose. That's a pretty obvious deal how that came about. But then, of course, you got to have the zookeeper. You got then
Right.
you got to have the hunter, and you know, the falcon or the peregrine for Wayne King. And there's guys, I think guys were trying to invent their own nicknames at there for a while. But it was kind of cute, and but you know, that it was kind of a period deal where guys had nicknames, and it was kind of fun. But yeah, Fast Jack is, you know, that's the first one that comes to mind right now. That somebody that's out there racing that actually has a nickname that's kind of stuck.
Going back to some stuff I'd seen on Facebook this week, the guys over at National Trail have posted, it's a crazy video if you haven't seen it. It's of Mike Dunn's crash at the top end of that track. And that track was just known for how short it was.
Well, yeah, we can talk about National Trail for a little bit here because it kind of leads a few different directions. Like a lot of tracks, when National Trail was built, I mean, it was sufficient for the time. I mean, the cars were probably running 160 or 170 miles an hour when that track was built out east of Columbus, Ohio, out in the little town of Kirkersville. So it was laid in a piece of property that at the time, I say it fit. Well, obviously the cars continued to get faster and faster and faster, and the track could not get any longer. I mean, it dead-ended. There was a small little county road that ran across the end of the racetrack, and that was it. You had nowhere to go. So over the years, you know, the parachute technology and the brake technology all pretty well kept up, but every now and then something would go wrong and you'd have a runaway situation, and that's when some of the tracks started coming up with safety nets and something at the end of the track, sand traps, and Columbus was that way for a long time. It's since been corrected, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but at the time, the end of Columbus was the end, and you had a street that ran across the end, a little country road, and there was a triple steel guardrail that ran across the end of the track there to prevent a car from getting out onto that road. I mean, if you had a runaway, it was going to be a bad situation, but at the time, we had no choice but to say, you can't get outside the property. We can't put a car out on that road. It wasn't heavily traveled, but it was the end.
When the fuel cars were running, wasn't there someone standing out there kind of watching that
Well,
road?
a little later on they did.
Oh, okay.
At the time, that was the end. It was a small sand trap, and we had come up with a safety net that was a big cargo net, and it was a nylon. It wasn't, the company that made them did not make them as a drag race net. They were a cargo net for ships. You'll see sometimes a big net, and it's like a 1-inch nylon mesh pattern, and with big steel poles on both sides to anchor that net to. The net was about 4 foot tall and about 65 feet wide, and it was pretty efficient as far as stopping a car. I went to Columbus, whatever year this was, and I'm down there, and I got into town a little bit early, and I was just uneasy about the issue down. Cars were getting faster and faster, so I had them install 2 more big steel poles and run a second net. We had a spare net in case one went down. Well, I went ahead and instead of having it just laying there rolled up as a standby, we put it in place to have two nets. I don't know, it was just one of those things that crossed your mind, and we were able to do it. Well, short story, Mike Dunn had a runaway situation. You've probably seen pictures of it, and he got through that first net. I mean, as fast as he was going, I mean, sharp edges on the cars, everything, whatever it was, he cut his way, the car did, through that net and into the second net. I've often wondered what would have happened had the second net not been there, because he would have been into a steel solid guardrail, still going pretty fast. And I'm just thankful thankful we were able to do it, that the track people, complied with the request, and it turned out well for Mike. He still took a boot. When I see him claw out of that car,
crazy.
He hit that thing hard. He come to a sudden stop.
Obviously, the whiplash effect. I was watching it again the other day. He was in the
prime of his life, in good shape, and for whatever reason, he bounced out of it, and he was okay. But that was an ugly incident.
I'll post that video on the group when we're done here, in case anyone hasn't seen it. But it's spectacular.
Yeah, I'll tell another one. I could talk about Columbus quite a bit, because a lot of things kind of started at Columbus, that track prep and track construction and things. But we had another runaway down there one time. We had a guy named Tommy Dumble, and the car was the Gravedigger. So you got, I think he was out of Oklahoma. It was a rear engine top fuel car, and same thing. He had a runaway situation, parachute didn't open, went off the end of the track, and it was a different net back then. This was before Mike's deal. And he went through this net like it wasn't even there, and he got to that triple steel guardrail. We got down there, and when I got down there, my heart dropped, because all I could see was just 3 rows of guardrail, and this side was the engine and the wing and the rear end of the car. It's a rear engine car, and Tommy and the whole front of the car is underneath that guardrail, and there's a bunch of shrubbery and brush, and I can't see anything down there. And I knew this guy, and his head was on the farm field across the way, and I didn't really want to go outside the gate to get to the other side of this fence to find what I thought I was going to find. We get out there, you had to go down a couple hundred feet to go through a gate to get on the back side of the fence that ran across the end in this guardrail. It was blind. You couldn't see what was on the side. And I got over there, and I could hear him muttering and mumbling down inside the car. And there were other people down there. The safety crew was down there. I wasn't there by myself. But he was down inside the frame rails. Didn't have a scratch on him. I mean, you're getting out of this damn thing, And it almost turned kind of comical then, because there was some old lady on that little country road, and we were blocking her way, and she was trying to get to the market, and it turned out kind of comical. But boy, that first sight of just seeing the wing, the engine, and the rear tires underneath this guardrail, what I had in my mind for a couple seconds.
There's got to be pictures of that. Are there pictures of that around?
There may be. I haven't seen one recently, but it's just it's a little bit frightening when you see it from that angle. But he was fine. Now, I think he may have had a couple of bumps and bruises on him, but that could have been a horrible tragedy. Since then, the Columbus track, they made a deal with the farmer across the way and the local authorities, and they paved it all. They leveled it to grade. So when they have a race now, they open up that end of that track, and they paved 200 or 300 feet of pavement into the farmer's field across the way. So now you've got a good runoff area at Columbus. We didn't have it in those days, and I think it took some changes politically and everything to make it happen, obviously with the farmer across the way. But it's been corrected, so Columbus was able to do that, much in the same way they did at Maple Grove. Maple Grove had the exact same situation, a short track with a road across the end, and they've done the same thing at Maple Grove. Kind of got the same thing at Pomona. Pomona is, by all standards, a short track. You know, they've got a great sand trap down there, and we've all seen cars go into that
Right.
trap. But you can't make Pomona any longer. Unfortunately, I think the 1,000-foot thing is obviously helped with the fuel cars, but it's still, you know, everybody when they race there, they need to pay attention to getting things stopped.
Well, I was teasing with that that plaque when we went live, and I remember seeing that plaque in your office, and if I'm not mistaken, it was a gag gift that you got when back in the old good old NHRA days, you guys would have a fun Christmas party, and someone gave. That's the way I remember that. But the little engraved plaque in the corner says "Desperate men do desperate things, Gainesville, 1980." So, can you tell that story about what happened?
Well, yeah, and that was a desperate situation. Get my thoughts together here for a second, but Gainesville needed to be repaved. The track surface wasn't real good, and so
Leading up to that race,
yeah,
or years
it
prior?
had been. I'll go back a way. You know, for the longest time, all these tracks were just asphalt only. There were no
Right.
concrete pads. Talking about Columbus a little bit earlier, the first track we ever put a concrete pad at was at Columbus, and it was just a short pad. It was 25 feet behind the starting line and 50 feet out. It was basically it was a patch almost, because the surface of the asphalt had deteriorated, constant burnouts, launches. It always left a bald spot, they called it, and the tracks would get wore out, especially asphalt. It wasn't near as durable as concrete. So anyway, Gainesville needed to be repaved, and the local contractor, whatever formula they used, it had too much sand in it. And we got down there, and the surface was as smooth. It was beautiful, like a pool table. It was flat, it was smooth, it was beautiful. But it seemed like when the cars would either do a burnout or launch, they call them fines. It's fine sand would come up out of the new pavement, and you'd get this cushion off to the side of the track with real fine sand. If you were in the middle of the track, I think Perdome that year was running in the fives before. It wasn't just barely guys going in the fives. But if you were in the middle of the track in the groove, you were fine. But if you got a wheel out of that groove, and we didn't have this tractor stuff and all the track prep and things we have today, we crashed a lot of cars. I mean, it was scary. I mean, especially the cars with the stick shift, they had changed gears, and next thing you know, they're sideways into the guardrail. And I think one day we crashed like 4 or 5 cars during the day. I mean, you might have one crash a race or something, but when you got 3 or 4 a day, you got a problem. And it's pretty obvious it's this new paving. Well, what are you going to do? And I mean, it's one of those things you're almost hoping it was going to rain to get you out of this deal, because you don't know what's going to happen next. In fact, I think it was Saturday night late. One of the last cars to run was a high-powered super stocker. I think it was a Hemi Cuda, and it got out and got that thing. I mean, immediately it took a left turn and hit that steel guardrail and launched over the guardrail and landed on the spectator fence. I mean, it was late at night. It was people had gone home. There was nobody there. But the next day, there's going to be a ton of people standing on that fence. And man, I honestly didn't know what to do. And I mean, it got almost to the point of considering canceling the race because of the track conditions. I got thinking about it, and there was a product they called SS1H. It's a asphalt emulsion that is used to seal driveways with, and it's applied in a big spray truck, and it's put down hot. And I got thinking maybe we can do something. So I got a hold of a local asphalt contractor, probably the guys that paved the track, and asked them if they had the SS1H, and they did, and they had the truck and everything. And I probably had 8 or 10 kegs of powdered rosin, which the guys use for, they call it the gold dust.
Right.
And I'm trying to, you talk about flying by the seat of your pants. The guy came out with this truck with this asphalt compound.
So this is Saturday night?
This is Saturday night, and it's at night already. We never went to bed that night, never got to bed. So it's probably somewhere around 9, 10 o'clock, and we're starting to put this plan together for the next day. Anyway, I got this, you showed this thing earlier with this pan.
Yeah.
Jim Annan, our buddy Jim Annan's got his motorhome down there, and there's a few guys in there, and some of the guys, they're not all caught up in this deal like I am. I mean, I'm knee deep in this as the event director and trying to figure out what to do. And some of them are telling me, I forget about it, everything's going to be okay. Well, it wasn't going to be okay. So I got this pan, and I went out and I got some of that asphalt. And when it's cold, it's almost like real solid tar, but you get it hot and it gets liquidy. So I go into Anna's motorhome, and I got this pan about a third full of this black tar and put it over the stove, and I'm getting it hot, and I got this traction, powdered rosin in a cup or something over here, and I'm pouring it in the liquid asphalt to see if it'll blend, because if it does, I'll go out and I'll dump all that stuff in this big tank truck outside, and we're going to brew up some traction compound is what we're going to do. And it did. It blended, and I was doing pretty good, and I'm holding it over this stove, and I heard somebody say, I wonder what the flash point is on that. On just about that time, poof, we figured out that was the flash point, and all of a sudden I got this pan of fire. I mean, this is in the middle of the motorhome, and a couple of guys hanging out, probably had too many beers, and I'm, make way, and I'm going through the motorhome. I mean, that could have been ugly. If I'd have tripped and spilled that in there, Jesus. Anyway, I got outside Anna's motorhome. I threw the pan up against the fence, and just absolute, this is a horrible situation. Anyway, we brewed up our traction compound. We went out, we sprayed the track. I mean, we're out all night. Never went back to the hotel that night. We were at the racetrack all night long doing this. And after we had sprayed it and it kind of set up, we went out with the emergency trucks and drove up and down, up and down, up and down to kind of work it in. And anyway, we got through the next day with no crashes. We basically created a sticky surface outside the groove of the racetrack, and we got through it. And it was one of those you just pull out of the hat, thankful that it worked. Anyway, later on, the pan showed up at some point. I asked somebody, geez, I wish I had saved that pan, and I didn't think much about it. And sometime later, I don't know, it was a birthday party or Christmas party, somebody handed me this plaque, and it said, desperate men do desperate things, which, boy, absolutely true. That was one that, we snuck it through, and basically, I think we saved that race. It could have easily been bad.
Oh my gosh. Well, that pan is just synonymous to me with your career, and it's gone to every office, and I took it to my office when I was in Spokane, and there was days, I don't think people really understand the true meaning of tired. When I think about just how tired you must have been, they just don't know what goes into...
That was 1980, so I'd have been half the age I am now.
Oh my God.
I don't know what would happen if it did now, but we got through it, and thank God for Jim Annan and being there and putting up with us. But it's a good story. It had a good ending, and but somebody asked you about it. It takes a while to tell the whole story, how to lead up to the punchline. But we had another episode like that. Baton Rouge was a similar in a way as Baton Rouge was a pretty, I'll call it almost primitive track. And we got done there one year, and track operator Norman Moose Parra, we could tell Moose stories for a long time, but I got into town early, and he kept saying things. I think it's going to be okay. Well, what? I think that the contractor said it's going to be all right. Well, making me nervous. What's going to be all right? Well, this sealer, this track prep stuff. What'd you do? Well, he had a local guy come out and spray. It's a slurry seal, and this is something that goes on cold. This isn't a hot. It's just a liquid. It's a driveway sealer that's used around the country, and it's not really asphalt. It's an emulsion of some kind. I don't know chemically what it is, but it isn't pavement. It's just kind of a thick seal coat stuff. And I went out and I looked at it, and it's pretty. It's all nice and black, but it just had a funny texture. Again, no concrete pads were there. And okay, well, it's time to start racing. We prepped the track like we normally do, and the first pair of stockers, I'm not talking the big cars, I'm talking the lowest category we had, left the starting line, and it was a rooster tail of black stuff in the air. I mean, it looked like water from a boat drags, and oh Christ, my heart dropped, and we run a few more cars. I mean, every pair of cars is just throwing this rooster tail of this crap in the air, and I just... Well, we're in big trouble here. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen when we put a pro car up here. So I went out there, and with help, I mean, all this stuff I say, I obviously had a lot of help with the safety safari guys and other people, and I had a great crew of good, hard working, loyal people. But started scraping this stuff, and it really kind of came off fairly easy, and you could get back down to the original pavement, which wasn't great. I mean, but at least it was actual, honest to God, asphalt paving and not this crap that was there. So we said, well, let's grab everything we can get that we can scrape with. We had these scrapers, we had shovels, we had a little road grader, and I think we spent about 4 hours out there scraping every bit of this stuff we could get off the old pavement, and we had piles of this stuff along the side of the racetrack, but we got back down to the original surface. We hosed her down. I think we used some kind of detergent. We scrubbed it, we washed it, and I'd say that probably mid-afternoon, this started in the morning, by mid-afternoon we had a racetrack again, and it wasn't the greatest racetrack, but we finished the event. We got through it, and again, another one of those where, the same thing, desperate men do desperate things. That would have applied at Baton Rouge on that episode. But, you're flying by the seat of your pants out there. You hope you make the right call. Sometimes it works.
Yeah, I've been posting some... With all of us being home, I've been going down that rabbit hole of YouTube videos, and there's just some great Diamond P stuff on there. And I came across, I think it's Atlanta, where Glidden crashed.
Oh, yeah.
And I think you had weather that weekend, and I think you ended up finishing on Monday. But there was a shot of you guys scraping the starting line with, I can see those scrapers now, you doing that. And was that a fairly new thing? Or did that? How did that come about? Again,
if you go back to the evolution of things and how it worked out, you'll see that now. If you watch the shows, every now and then they'll show the crews out there scraping the track, and they got the torches and they heat them up, and you can do that on concrete pretty well. To scrape an asphalt track, that's really tricky.
You have to finesse that, right?
Yeah, that's the first time. As far as I know, and maybe somebody else had done it, I don't know. But we're at Indy one year, and you run a lot of cars at Indy, and this was prior to concrete pads. And it was a hot day, pretty hot at Indy, and that rubber, after so many runs, that rubber builds up, and we were winding up with big balls of rubber, bigger than golf balls, literally, just clumps of rubber around the starting line to where guys were having a hard time finding a place on the racetrack to line up without literally driving over these big clumps of rolled up rubber. So we got to do something here. So those torches that you see in that picture of me with that one torch, we bought those things originally just to dry up water. We didn't have any vision. And those scrapers were basically, we had a couple of them. If you had a big oil down and you put a bunch of grease sweep on it, it would make like a mud almost. So we had a few of those. And I said, we got to be careful here, but let's heat up this rubber just enough to where that scraper, we can maybe skim it off, but we can't burn the asphalt because we'll tear up the racetrack. And then we managed to do that and clear, that immediate area on the starting line. It was just right around where the launch area was, where you had this really.
So some tracks were worse than others to do that?
Well, it depended on the weather. If it was real hot weather, the rubber would get really soft. Yeah. And some of the guys were using traction compounds then, puddling their stuff, and that would soften the rubber. So everything was just constantly changing then. But the one in Atlanta, I think by then, they probably had a concrete pad, and it's almost routine now when the rubber builds up. You go out there and you scrape it to get back down to get it nice and smooth. But that was a tough race, that one. And I was trying to remember some of the issues there, and the Glidden wreck was really ugly, and Bob was really lucky to get out of that.
Yeah, he was.
Especially the way he got up on top of that guardrail. That could have been bad, but his only concern was covering up his carburetors down there, so his competition couldn't see what he was doing. But
right, Jeremy Tyler just posted that the first thing he did was throw his jacket over his head.
Glidden was that. I mean, the word fanatic doesn't even come close. He was as intense a racer as I ever encountered, and I've encountered a few of them. Him, Perdome, Garlitz, some of those guys. I mean, it's just their intensity level is off the chart. And Glidden was right there. And a couple of them other pro stock guys, Warren Johnson wasn't far behind. But that was a tough race. The weather was there. They made reference. I think we wound up finishing it the next day with just a couple of runs, which is, you hate winding up that way. But, Ace won it and Snow won, which was, Pastorini won that one.
Pastorini, right.
Yeah, which was, that was great. Dan didn't race a long time. I'm glad he came out of the sport with a Wally.
Yeah, that was neat. He did pretty good that year. That was neat watching that. And man, you get on those YouTube, going down that rabbit hole, there's some great stuff. And of course we love listening to Steve Evans and our buddy Dave McClelland, and then, we were talking about Mike Dunn earlier. It just makes me miss their voices. I love hearing them.
Yeah, those guys were the best. We're lucky to still have Big Mac around. He's been ailing a little bit lately, but we stay in touch with him. He's going to try to join us out at Derwindale in November if he's feeling up to it. And then, we're not going to put him to work, but I'd love to have him there just to greet the crowd. There's nothing like Big Mac on the mic.
I've got so many things going through my head, but I'm going to be selfish here because this is it's one of my favorite stories. I was thinking about announcers, and then I was thinking about, my brain works. I'm picturing that scene from American Graffiti, or more American Graffiti, when Evans is in the tower, and I think that was shot at Fremont.
It was, yeah.
Which then takes my brain to just the Fremont track, which makes me think of Cloy Fitzgerald. So can you tell me your best Cloy Fitzgerald story about Fremont? This one just cracks me up.
Yeah, Cloy Fitzgerald, what a wonderful guy. I mean, he was the NHRA Tech guy for so long, and you had to love Cloy.
I do love Cloy.
At the time I managed Fremont, and I wasn't there a long time, they had a timing system that it was a one-of-a-kind system. A fellow named Jim Guthrie had built it. I think a lot of, I'm not sure, maybe military parts or something. It's a great system, but it was really, he was probably the only guy that could really make it work the way it was supposed to work. And Cloy had a club race out there every year, and so we went up and set. It was just Cloy and his guys, and I went out. We set the track up for him, and I said, "All right, you ready? It's your deal." And yeah. I left. So I got a phone call. I can't remember. I was off somewhere with a guy named Al Caldwell, but somehow Cloy got a hold of me and said, "Hey, the clocks aren't working." Really? Man, I don't know what to do. And I think I went back out there and messed, and I couldn't figure out. I couldn't make them work. I mean, I was used to deal with, the Crown decks. I hadn't been in Fremont too long when this all happened, and I really hadn't been schooled on this one-of-a-kind set of clocks. And so Cloy, I don't know what to do. I'm sorry, Bill. I'll take care of it. Don't worry about it. I think, okay. So I went off. Later in the day, I think I went back to the track, and things are wrapping up. People are leaving, and it looks like it got done. Yeah. I said, well, what'd you do? Did you get the clocks to working? No. Well, what'd you do? He says, oh, I just made up time. And what? You what? What'd you say? He says, I know how these guys run. I know their cars. And the tree would count down, apparently. And he ran the race and made up times. I don't know. I can't imagine everybody not. I think they probably just went along with it to get done. But to have the balls to do that, to be up in the tower and make up times for a race. I said, Cloy, you're my hero, pal. I can you imagine me setting up in the tower and Shirley and Connie and Snake and the Goose out there racing and me up there making up times? He did it. He got through it. And Cloy, my hat's off to you, pal. You talk about pulling one out of your hat.
I never get tired of hearing that. This is so good.
We had
so
some
good.
Time at Fremont. One more story at Fremont about times. We had Doug Cruzy was a pretty big promoter back in that era in the late '60s with the PDA, the Professional Dragster Association, and he put on a few races, a couple of them at Lyons, and I think maybe one out at Fontana, but they were 3 dragster classes. It was top fuel, top gas, and junior fuel. This is a pretty funny car. So he had one of his PDA races at Fremont when I was up there. And it had been just one of those plagued races right from the start. Jack Williams was working for Cruzy, and I mean, John Collins, junior fuel car, got off the track. He blew the motor right out of his car, and the car went off in the field, and it's hot, dry, and there's all the weeds out there. He caught the top end of the racetrack on fire. I mean, all these weeds. Fire department had to come out and put out. And, Bobby Bowser, I mean, running down, pulling John Collins out of that car. It would wreck down there. It was just a day you couldn't wait for it to get over. And we finally got down to we're down to the finals. We got top fuel, top gas, and junior fuel, the 3 final runs of the day, and we're finished with this goddamn thing. And so we're waiting, and the fans are patient. They're out there, and all of a sudden, there was some kind of bracket bomber that, I don't know, too much to drink or whatever. He drove his car right into the one telephone pole out of the corner of the pits, in the main transformer with all the power coming into the facility was on that pole.
Oh, shit.
And when he hit it, the wires shorted out, and it blacked out the whole facility. So I got a hold of PG&E, who was the power company up there. Well, it's going to be hours before we can get out there. Well, now what? So Cruzy and I got together. I said, well, we got to finish this race, and we'll run it and call him by eye. And Chet Carter was a long-time starter at Fremont in those days, and Chet had a set of flags in this old sedan or coupe, touring car he had, that pink little tub that sat out there on the starting line at Fremont all those years. So Chet, you flag him off, and Cruzy and I will go down at the end of the track. So we walked down the fence line, and the fans, this is getting late, a lot of fans probably left, announcing to everybody, we're going to run this race, we're going to call them by eye, we're going to finish this thing, and we did. We went down, Cruzy took one lane, I took the other, and I said, when they come through, you look at me, I'll look at you, and we'll decide who wins. And two of the races were pretty easy to call, and I don't even remember. I think James Lauren won Top Fuel. I'm not even sure who the winners were.
Oh my
but
gosh.
one of the races, it was like that. And I think I pointed to his side, and he kind of did that. And we wound up with 3 winners, and it wasn't a big. I think everybody would just get it over with. I mean, I don't care win, lose, or draw. I want out of here. And that's that was another one that, God, when you went home that night, you just, why am I doing this?
Oh my God.
But
I don't think I've ever heard you tell that story.
Yeah,
Wow.
if we're talking about that, it came up another time, similar kind of a deal. The first time we went to Australia and New Zealand was quite a few years ago, and our good friend Garth Hogan invited me to come to.
Mm-hmm.
He was operating a track called Hastings at the time, and same thing. They had a one-of-a-kind timing system down there, and I was just basically brought in to kind of help him out a little bit, give him a little guidance, things to do at the track, and we were guests at his house. A wonderful host, Garth Hogan. What a wonderful guy, him and his wife Andrea. But anyway, we're out at the racetrack, and this was Christmas and New Year's. They had that's a big weekend down there. They basically, that's their summertime, so it's a prime time of year, and they shut everything down. And they had 2 big events on Christmas and New Year's at Hastings, and but the clocks wouldn't work. So it's kind of the same thing. What are we going to do? I think at least they had a PA system there. So Garth says, you handle it. Yeah, right. You fly me 8,000 miles down here to get in the middle of this mess.
Thanks, pal.
So yeah, you go tell them what we're going to do. Okay. So I said, do you have any flags? You got to, he said, I think we do. And then we found a set of flags. And Lee Cohen was a pretty big name in the sport, the good, bad, and the ugly car. He was one of the co-owners of that car and a good friend of Garth's. And he was in New Zealand at the same time, and he had done some starting Salinas and stuff. So I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. And I gathered everybody in there and says, all right, guys, we got a problem. The clocks don't work. It's not going to be fair, but we're going to run you guys. It's going to be heads up. There's no handicaps. We're going to have a winner. We're going to have a loser. It's not going to be fair, but that's what we're going to do. And I'm thinking, oh, well, here comes the bitching and the moaning and the griping.
What?
I get a round of applause. Really? I mean, they know how to treat a stranger, right? And just about that time, their maintenance guy come in. We got him working. Well, in the end, it was all for naught, But I was just, again, I couldn't imagine myself going to a room with Snake and Coletta and Shirley and Bradley and all these guys.
I'm clapping.
And tell them we're going to run this race and put a flag and we got no times or nothing. I don't think the reaction would have been the same. But my gratitude to the New Zealand racers for accepting that decision, as it were, it would never happen.
Well, that's funny. I don't remember hearing that either. But going back to Fremont, and I mean, I was in first grade, so it just strikes me how young you were at that time, being in those situations. Like, it really, at the time I wouldn't have thought of it, but I think back now, just how young you were in those situations. And one of the requests we got last week was for a Jungle Jim story. And the Jungle Jim folklore and Jungle Pam and all that is well documented, but there was a story about Jungle and the funny car drivers that took place at Fremont. Can you tell that?
This will take a couple of minutes to tell.
We'll probably end on this story, but I think it's a cool story that not a lot of people know.
It is a good story, and I've told it before, and some people may be familiar with it, but some of it, and it just it almost makes me a little teary-eyed sometimes when I tell it. But I had moved I was running Urbandale Raceway for a couple of years as a manager, and I got a call from the guy that operated Fremont and made me a nice offer to come and manage the track at Fremont. Enough to the point that, you know, you're looking out for your family, and the money difference was big enough that I didn't really want to leave Irwindale. I was fine there, great track, great people, but I had a chance to move up, and you know, it's just something that I felt I had to do. So I took the job at Fremont, and we were up there running the track. And in the meantime, the guy I was working for was in the midst of taking over another racetrack, and he was on the move. He was going to be a big-time track operator, and he was working on a deal actually at the track in Green Valley, Texas. He was going to take that one over, and I was going to run Fremont for him. And so we were going along when we were running our weekly events out there, and things were going pretty good. And we'd leased a house up there, and I'd kind of settled into Fremont for, I didn't know, I was hoping the long haul. And we'd rented our house in Southern California. We didn't sell it. We were going along. Well, funny cars were a big deal, and a lot of them would come west for the winter. And they'd have like the manufacturers' funny car race at Orange County and Lyons and Irwindale. And there's big funny car races in October and November. And these guys would be on the West Coast really most of the winter. And we had a race scheduled at Fremont late in October. And anyway, I kept getting calls from the property owners at Fremont and say, hey, your boss hasn't, he's behind on the lease payments. Really? Okay. I mean, I was getting paid. I didn't know we had a money problem. I had a nice gal out there, a secretary, taking care of paying the bills, and I thought everything's okay. But so about a month before this big funny car event in October, the landowners, the property owners at Fremont, they were getting kind of, hey, you better get your guy to get settled up on this, otherwise we're going to put a padlock on the place. And I'll call him. So I'd call, talk to him, hey, we need to settle up, don't worry about it. My guy's coming to town, our backer, he had a financial guy that was kind of backing him on his efforts to expand his operation. Well, you know, it's getting closer to the event. The ads are all over the radio about this giant funny car event coming up, and we're doing business like normal. Well, the backer comes to town, and when he gets there, he does a little snooping around, and as it turns out, he didn't like what he saw. He didn't like the way the Fremont books looked and the way things were going. So he basically said, you know, I'm not going to pay this. I'm not going to bail your boss out of this thing. In fact, I really don't want to do business with him anymore anywhere. Really? Well, now what? I mean, I was caught here. Here I am. I'm just, you know, I got no financial interest in this track. I'm just working for a paycheck. And we got all these funny car guys. Now it's starting to be close to the race time. And so the owners of the track said, we're going to do whatever paperwork. We're going to serve papers. We're going to run the race this weekend. We're going to take over and run it, and we'll take the money. Well, it's one of these deals where the weather forecast starts coming out, and it's going to rain. It's not one of these deals, maybe rain. It's going to rain this weekend of the race. So here I am. You talk about being in the middle of a mess. The guy I'm working for has been evicted, basically. I'm out there. I don't really know where my next check is going to come from. The landowners, they say, well, we don't want to get involved in this rain. It's going to be a big money loser. We'll just take over next month. Well, it was basically them stuck here with a race with nobody claiming it, you know. And all these funny car guys are coming to town, and the ads are out about this big race. And geez, what do I got to lose? We'll run the damn thing anyway, you know, and we'll see what happens. I was stupid on my part. I probably should have just put a padlock on the gate and walked, you know. And but I didn't. And we went out there and we ran, and we got finished pretty much on Saturday. And the weather was edgy and shaky, and we had a halfway decent crowd. Then it rained, and the rain started. So we got out there on Sunday, and it was a dead player. So I gathered up all the guys. They had a bunch of guys in on bookings. I mean, you're talking about Gas Ronda and Jungle and Chi-Town, and I mean, there was a bunch of guys in town, named cars for this big event. And normally it would have been a big money maker if the weather would have been good, but it wasn't. And a lot of the money that came in, I had to pay at the gate. I mean, the ambulance guys would not cover the event until they got paid in advance. There was 2 or 3 other issues that, I mean, the money was coming in and it was going right back out. So it got to the point when the race is over. I had whatever money I had left. I went through what these guys were all getting on their guarantees, and it worked out to about 50 cents on the dollar. And I called them and said, guys, you're not going to like this, but number one, the track is closed. I mean, it's done. The promoter, he's gone. He's out of here. I'm out of work. I don't have a job. There's going to be a lock on the gate Monday morning. I got this much money. That's it. There was some grumbling and griping, and, you know, obviously, I mean, I think everybody would have done that. And so we get through the day. I paid the guys the money I had, and it's wet, it's raining, I'm miserable. I mean, it's down in the dumps because what am I going to do? I got no job now. It was really a pretty ugly circumstance. And so I get back to their house, and I'm sitting around. My buddy Jim Edmonds was there, and Bill Kreitz, and I got a phone call from Lieberman, Jungle Jim. He said, hey, we need to talk to you. You need to come down here to the Fremont Inn. We need to see you. And I think, Christ, these guys they're not happy about the money deal. They're going to grind me, thinking I've got some more cash. There was no more. I mean, it was gone. I didn't even take any for myself. And Jim, I said, no, it's done. It's over. Just let it go. You know, no, you got to come down here. We need to see you. We want to talk to you about this deal. And finally, I said, okay, all right, I'll come there, but don't expect me to be able to do anything. No, come on down. So I get down there to the Fremont Inn, in whatever room they're in, and I go in there, and I wish I could remember all the guys who were in that room. It wasn't all the funny car racers, but quite a few of them from that event. And Jim was pretty much kind of the spokesman. And he said, you've been fair with us, because I've done business with him at other times. He says, we know you're going to have, a rough time ahead. He says, here, this is for you. And he handed me an envelope, and I looked inside it, and there was about, if I remember right, about $3,000 in cash in there. And I mean, how often do you hear other racers doing something like that for the track operator? Lieberman, he had his ways, and he was kind of a wild guy at times, and came to a sad end. But boy, don't ever say anything bad about Jim Lieberman to me. I mean, the guy, he had a heart of gold. He helped me out, and the other guys too. I mean, it wasn't just him. There was other racers that chipped into this. Lieberman is the one that was talking. And for all of them, and I don't know to this day who did what, how much they put in, who did, who didn't. It doesn't matter. But a group of racers helped me at a time when I didn't know what was going to happen next. And it really, to this day, it feels good knowing that I had that kind of a relationship with those guys. In the long term, it worked out okay. The track operators asked me to stick around for a while until they got somebody new to operate the track. That wound up being Jim McLennan, who I had a great relationship with. I could have probably stayed in Fremont and worked for McLennan, but we decided to come back to Southern California, and it was later that year that I went to work for an HRA. So it was kind of it was good news, bad news, but overall it was an experience I would never trade, because it bonded Lieberman and me for the rest of as long as he was around.
It's a great story, a great story, and I didn't hear it till much later. I think Don Prieto had written an article in a magazine and had talked about it, and I was really thankful to know that story.
Again, some folks may have heard the story. It's been out there a couple of different times.
it's nice to know that side of.
Oh, absolutely. You just don't hear that. You know, you hear the stories about guys going in and the track operator's got a gun cutting their pay. I mean, I've heard all those stories about the relationship between track operators and racers. And you know, you try to get along with all those guys and be fair with them. And I think that what goes around does come around in most ways, and I think that was a case here where they saw that I needed some help, and you know, your little sister wasn't even born yet, you know,
Right.
and you were, how old were you, 5 or 6?
I was 6, I
Six,
think.
and,
Yeah.
and so, you know, a young family in an area, we'd moved from, you know, Southern California to Northern California, didn't know where the next paycheck was coming from, and these guys stepped up, and I'll be forever grateful.
That's cool. Well, we'll end on that note. Before we leave here, though, I'll give you the winners of our Caption This, which was your picture sitting there up in Pomona in the suites. And Kurt Sanderson had, his quote was, "Been there, done that. You're welcome, folks." I liked that one. And Joseph Larimore put "Waiting for November," which just the look on your face is just, I know, seeing you every day, that's just kind of what we're doing. So I'll send tickets to those 2 guys, and you guys have had great comments, and I appreciate them all, but just sometimes just 1 or 2 of them just strikes me. So we appreciate everyone's input. It's a lot of fun, and we're waiting for November.
Yeah, we are waiting for November. It's again, it's you know, we need to get through this deal. It's a serious deal, and we're doing our social distancing, and
trying to have fun.
Trying to have fun, you know. I've got a good doctor buddy I talked to a long time yesterday about the whole situation, and it is serious, you know. And I think everybody needs to take it that way, and let's get through this thing, and take care of each other. Wear your masks. Be careful out there, but we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.